Hey everybody, I'm going to do a quick video about creating flow between sentences. I've given you a couple examples. I thought I would go ahead and go through one and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm using a paragraph from a student's essay. I'm using a body paragraph. And the very first thing, and it's a fairly long paragraph. So one of the things to do, or that this will help you do, is you're going to turn it into a series of a list of sentences, right? So for each one, you're going to find the end of the sentence and you're just going to turn it into its own line, like its own numbered. This is going to help you create flow in your essay easier, and it'll also help you see where you might want to break the paragraph, right? If your paragraph is too long, then you might want to find a place where you can actually break it. Okay, so I finished that. There are 21 sentences, so it's long. It's a long paragraph. So if you can, you might want to find a place to break it. And where you break it is where sort of one idea sort of finishes and another one begins. Okay, so I'll just do this example, right? So I have increased use of social media leads to decreased communication skills because less time is spent fully engaging in conversation with those around us in real life. That's the topic sentence. Stellar topic sentence. Uses because. Good argument. Perfect. Next. This is evidenced by the typical behavior often observed in restaurants. Okay, so we could say that the way it's written, when you say this is evidenced, it's referring to what was just came before, right? So it's sort of using language to refer backwards to what just was said. So that counts as a connection. See if I can do a connection in different, Okay, so this is evidenced by the typical behavior often observed in restaurants. Often adolescents spend more time checking their phones than participating in conversations happening around them. Okay, so this is a good example if you want to do something here, because there's no clear connection between the two, right? We all understand the connection. You just said something about restaurants and then you just said something about adolescence. But what makes the writing, like the flow, smoother is when you actively go in and put in language that will help the reader follow it, right? Because we're like, oh, it seems obvious, but readers, you have to really spell everything out for readers. So something. All right, so here's what I wrote. So it says, this is evidenced by the typical behavior often observed in restaurants. While waiting for their food to arrive, or even while they are eating, often adolescents spend more time checking their phones than participating in the conversations happening around them, right? So all I did was put in like when they would be doing this, right? So they're waiting for their food, or sometimes when they're eating, whatever. I've just made a connection between observed in restaurants and then this next idea. So that's what I mean by adding language. You might think it's unnecessary, but it's not. It makes your writing much better and smoother, and it connects easier with the reader. Okay, we'll do another one. We'll just keep going, right? So while waiting for their food to arrive, or even while they're eating, often adolescents spend more time checking their phones than participating in the conversations happening around them. Fear of missing out can cause people to feel the need to constantly check their phones for messages. Okay, again, it makes some sense, right? There's a logic to the situation, to the sentences one after the other, but you want to add words or a phrase or something that makes it very clear that we're still talking about these same people, right? Instead of this, because this could refer to anybody. Fear of missing out can cause people, right? But we're sort of focusing in on a certain group already. So a simple thing I just put in, especially for adolescents, the fear of missing out can cause them to feel the need to constantly check their phones for messages. So again, I used adolescents over here, and that was in that sentence. I put especially for adolescents here, so there's a connection between those two. The fear of missing out can cause them to feel the need to constantly check their phones for messages. Unfortunately, this seems to have become accepted behavior in this day and age. Unfortunately, sort of doing the work there for you, right? So I would say that counts. Words, transitional words like that clearly refer to what was before, right? So like, therefore or however, those are, so unfortunately it's like that. So you could say that's fine enough. It seems rude to ignore the text message rather than reply back. So I would try to find a way, right, to try to connect these two. What may happen, right, is that you come across a sentence that maybe doesn't fit or you can't really connect. Maybe it doesn't belong in the paragraph, or you're just repeating yourself, or it might be a new subject that's coming up, right? So we sort of went from adolescents, using like always checking their phones, you're missing out. And then now we're getting into this other idea about it's rude if you don't reply right away. Like some people start to think that is rude. Okay, then we're getting into actual research that's going to help us support that. What you're looking for, though, and what I would say is that you're trying to, well, first, for this, because it's so long, you want to find a place to break it. So here's where I would break it. Another downfall of media multitasking that researchers found was reduced levels of empathy, right? So if I were doing this, I would just be like, okay, this is where I'm going to create a new paragraph. So I don't know, just make a note to myself or highlight it or whatever, right? Because if we're really going to start talking about this thing, anytime you're like another, look, those words mean you're going to add something, right? A new subject, a new idea is coming up. In any event, so this is what you can get. I just recommend people do this because it's easier to see how to make the transitions work. Obviously, once you start to do this and think about it when you're writing, you don't really need to do this breaking it down and adding. Your mind will automatically do that, and that makes your communication just way more absorbable for a reader. Makes you a great communicator and a great writer. That's the idea. All right.